There it goes.
Hey, we are live, everybody. Welcome back to the Elephant in the Room. It is Wednesday, April 24th. It's 6 p.m. and we have a special show tonight. I hope that you all are doing well this evening. Ariel, wow, this is like a great night. We're so happy to have two of our friends on the show. One we've known, at least I've known for a long time, the Astral, of course, Tyler. And Tom, it's such a pleasure to meet you finally. And this is like such a great way to meet. And thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
So we are here tonight to just have a little chat about all the latest talk that's been a buzz on Twitter. And thank you guys for joining us. Astral, you were hosting the space where everything went down the other night. So there's a conundrum because you were busy hosting, so you didn't have, your total focus on what was being said. But tell us a little bit about just give us background. What's happening? I'm out of the loop. I've been busy for the last couple of days, and I'm sure other people who don't know really what's going on could use like a refresher from the beginning.
Absolutely. And thanks for having me on. Great to be back. And man, what an exciting week I think it's been just from the UFO topic, from having a little bit of a lull for like a month or so. And we were having a space. I was co-hosting this space. So actually in the beginning, I was just hanging out, and it was an unrecorded space. Someone that I know, Rob Wood, was hosting the space. Great host, just kind of really just shooting the shit is what we were doing, talking about the UFO topic. People were going in and out. And we got up to the whistleblower, James Fox. There was a little bit of topic, of the whistleblowers and who this mystery person could be, and talking about some of the speculation. And I think it just really motivated Jason Sands to come up to the space as he was listening. And I think what we found is that he's been listening to spaces. He's been listening to people talk, whether it's been about UFOs, the deeper relationship between psychic phenomenon, and some of these spaces really delve into. But he just really felt motivated to come up. And I think once somebody asked him, I think it was Rob directly asked him, like, are you the whistleblower from James Fox documentary? And he flat out was like, yeah. And I think that took it to another level. And so that was about when like 80 people were in the space, right? And so then people started directly asking him questions. And so then once I jumped up and started co-hosting, it just blew up from there. And keep in mind, like, it goes from like not really, it's being a very leisure space talking about UFOs and like kind of hanging out, to like, this is the whistleblower. Like, there was a little bit of a like, this might be a historic moment. Like, this is kind of serious. So like, everybody, and I'm like a couple drinks deep. I'm like hanging out. And so like, now I'm scrambling. I'm like, okay, now I got to get on my shit right now. Like, I've got to be on my toes. And so it went from like, 100 people in the space an hour later to the 1,000 people in the space.
Are you serious?
1,000 people in the space. And so not only that, the speaker panel was full, and there were 40 to 50 requests to come up and speak.
That's
just like that.
It got crowded.
And then all of a sudden people are like, Leslie Keene's down there, James Fox is here, and it's like Richard Doty, Green, everybody, the who's who was basically
showed up.
Space.
Oh, I didn't know this.
Oh yeah.
So,
I literally am so out of the loop.
Skeptics and believers alike. Like, Astral hit me up while I was in the shower when he just came on our podcast on Sunday, and I was telling everybody that like it was very sudden. Like, I was literally in the shower and my phone was going off, and I saw Astral's message, and I'm like, what's going on? And I literally stepped out of the shower to put myself in the space, and I like slid across the bathroom and had to like put my hands on the wall. I swear to God. And I put myself in line. I got my hand up, got back in the shower, was trying to clean off and everything. And I managed to speak to Jason a few times. It was wild. Like, it was the first time in a space where I chose to drop down to let someone else talk. Like, there weren't that many people waiting in line, and I was totally cool with that, obviously, because I wanted to hear and Oh my God, Astral, how long were we in that space? It was like
it ended up being, I think, 11 hours, but he was up there for 6 to 7 hours just
it was
asking. And
insane.
so if you've ever been in a space, I was talking about this yesterday. If you've ever been in a space for 6 to 7 hours, that's grueling enough.
I'm like,
Yeah.
But if
It
you're the subject getting absolutely grilled in the biggest
Right.
moment of your life
Right.
for hours, and then people are like super nitpicking on little details that you like, this might be the biggest moment of your life, and you have to on the spot remember questions that are about 10 or 15 years ago. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And like
Yeah,
give
it's true.
detailed answers. Like people were coming up and like really wanting detailed answers, which is fair.
Yeah.
But I think it's a starting. It was a great starting point. Like it wasn't the like end all be all. Like this is all we're gonna get. I think
Right.
now that we're seeing that there's like an open line of essentially
Dialogue.
communication and with the community, which is great. And I think that's what I took out of it most is like this shift that's happening maybe in media is happening because whistleblowers are getting fed up. They don't want to go to Arrow in these classical ways or expected ways, that they want to tell their story and they want to have control of it. And so that was one thing I took from it. Yeah.
Well, to be clear though, it sounds like he did go forward with a whistleblower complaint officially, correct?
Yeah.
According to his statement. So it's
Apparently,
not like he avoided that aspect. It's just how he came out to the public.
Sure.
That
He went to Arrow too. Like he put he was in the Arrow report. There were, I think somebody found the paragraph in which he kind of made the connection to his testimony in Arrow. Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. Oh,
Right.
wow.
So first off, after the show's over, Astral, you'll be getting my cell phone number so that you can let me know when this is happening next time. Because waking up the next morning, it was like the Twilight Zone. Like I check, I get up, I get my cup of coffee, I sit down, I open Twitter. And honestly, Astral, yours was the first I saw because you said something like waking up after like the greatest space. And I was like, what did I miss?
Yes, I think that's the one I
Like
saw
the Hangover.
So, it was totally like FOMO, like, oh, I'm totally missed out last night. And then I jumped in on the space that you and Holly were co-hosting, I think, and was trying to catch up. And oh my goodness, just trying to catch up on an 11-hour space. It was just so daunting. And then, Chris was like totally like MIA the whole day.
Totally. And I don't know. I think it was that evening. I'm like, wait, what's going on? There's something that happened and I'm just missing it. So,
yeah. So Holly texted James Fox during the space and she let him know, hey, someone is saying that, they're in your documentary, they're coming out. And I was kind of unclear on what he said back to her. Do you know exactly what did he just kind of acknowledge it and say like, okay, or at that time he was just like, I'm not going to comment, or do you know what he said back to her at that time?
So from what I understand, he acknowledged it almost. I don't want to speak for James, so because we have an open line of communication with him, but from what I took of it, it was almost like a cautious acknowledgement, like, oh, he is.
Okay.
Wow. You know what I mean? Didn't expect that. Like he was blindsided by it, but I think ultimately he supports it as well, because at the end of the day, it's that man's life, right? Like the documentary aside, and when we were talking to Jason, because this has been kind of like a hot button topic that I've kind of seen going back and forth in some of my posts. Like I had made a post about the potential negatives that could come here if Jason were to be, full of it. And what I was saying was that it could serve to undermine the documentary, but then the whole point of that would be to trickle down onto the forthcoming with whistleblowers, and then you have a real situation on your hands. Like, aside from James, like, as much as I respect his work, everything that he does, especially because I'm someone who does, similar things, I am more concerned with the validity of the claims. Like, the documentary is the documentary, but I'm concerned that if Jason is not being truthful, that it would then fall upon the other whistleblowers. That's the main thing that I'm concerned with. Like the documentary is a documentary, but Jason had said that there are certain details that he didn't really want to discuss because they were going to be in the documentary, and people were taking offense to that. And like I get that stance. Like I totally do. But if you're working side by side with someone that's making a documentary and part of it's going to be about you, and you build up a rapport with them, like you're not going to want to undermine that person's work, like regardless of the subject matter. Like if I made a documentary about Astral and his life, and then he went into a space and just told everything that was going to be in that documentary, like it's disrespectful in a way, right? Like
it's almost unethical in my opinion. And
right.
and it's likely, very likely that he signed an NDA for the work he was doing with James Fox. That's how most of it works. So he probably has an obligation to keep some of their activities private. And
that's a really good point.
I think too, like one of the things that I think about is he's not really good at or knowledgeable at Twitter or X.
Yeah.
And so in his mind, he's listening to these spaces, like he was saying, and people are speculating on his name and saying things about him. And so he's like, damn, I'm listening. Like, why don't I just jump up and like clarify some things real quick and like be like, hey, man, like, and so he jumped up and was like, hey, I'll answer a couple questions. And then it turned into this like huge thing. And it almost happened. Like he jumped into a space last night. He jumped into a space very quickly last night to confront Richard Doty.
Are you serious?
Yep. I actually didn't know that.
Yes, he confronted Richard Doty on what Richard Doty was saying. And so Richard Doty was in a space talking and he was listening, and then he jumped up as a speaker. This was actually happening last night. And he said, listen, man, like what you were saying was actually BS and like you need to retract it. And Richard Doty dropped down and disconnected after he came up and did that. Yeah.
No
and was not able to respond to what he and didn't respond. And so maybe I think he came on and then Jason jumped down and then everybody was basically like, oh, Jason, here's a question. Like, and then it almost turned into another Twitter because you know what I'm saying? So it's like, that's how I think that really happened. It wasn't intentional that he was like, I'm going to jump in and this is going to be my first thing. I think he jumped in and maybe like tried to like, okay, let me clarify some things. You guys are talking about me specifically. And then it was like, oh, this is your first appearance now. Like, this is an actual thing. And he was like, crap, now it is. And so like, then people were texting him and he even said in the space, like, damn, James Fox texted me. And like everybody here knows that like James Fox was like, damn, bro, like you just took a little bit of the thunder away from the reveal. But at the same time, I do feel like in a marketing perspective, it could benefit in the long run because he came out today and was basically like, look, I've vetted this guy. And look, I think like if he's come out in a Twitter space and the community can vet his claims, and I think people are like, is he going to take him out of the documentary now? Like, is he going to, like if now he's able to do that and he see that he's false, that's probably a benefit. If not, I'm really looking forward to it though.
Yeah.
If it's not, I'm looking forward to it even more because I'm like, what else is there?
The statement that he made too.
Do you have that, Tom?
Yeah, if you don't mind, I can pop that up.
Yeah, go for it. Do I have to give you some sort of authority? No, you got it.
I think
add the stage. There we go.
There we go. Boom. So I'll read it just because I can see it really well. There is a portion in here that references Doty. So this is the official statement from Jason Sands on recent discussions and misinterpretations via UAP United. It says, regarding the processes of whistleblowing in the various bodies involved, National Defense Authorization Act outlines the whistleblower process, not the Inspector General's process. The role of the Intelligence Community Inspector General, ICIG, where my case was ultimately directed, focuses specifically on investigations within the intelligence community. This was decided after some deliberation about whether my case should go to the Department of Defense Inspector General due to my role as an action officer last year. The distinction was made because my experiences related to my time on active duty as an intelligence analyst. Importantly, under the NDAA whistleblower legislative protections, the ICIG process does not confer any additional whistleblower status once a person is covered under these protections. In recent conversations, particularly during the spaced out radio broadcast around the 340 timestamp, I clarified that while 20 and back is not an official program name, it refers to a significant, though difficult, experience within the programs I was part of. It appears that this crucial part of my statement was omitted in some posts, leading to misunderstandings about my testimony. I am committed to providing more information soon to further clarify the challenging aspects of my experience within the program. There have been inaccuracies in public discussions about my clearance and credentials. Richard Doty recently suggested that the system used to look up my clearances was incorrect. My clearance levels and specific access details are not publicly accessible and require specific read-ins, which not everyone discussing my case has. Eric Davis also made erroneous claims regarding the system of record for my clearances. Such access is compartmentalized and limited to those with equivalent clearance levels. Both Mr. Doty and Mr. Davis have made significant errors in their public statements regarding my case. I urge them to retract their statements and correct the record. To everyone navigating through the intricacies of these discussions and disclosures, I appreciate your patience and diligence in seeking the truth. It's crucial that these conversations reflect the complexities and sensitivities of the issues at hand accurately. I remain committed to transparency and the pursuit of clarity in this ongoing dialogue. I gotta say, I know there's a lot of people that have their minds made up already, one way or the other. It's a pretty powerful statement from someone if they're full of crap. You know, I mean, there's a lot there, and you know, there's some people out there apparently that really don't trust Eric Davis, which I was surprised to see. But Doty, yeah, I mean, Doty, you know, he's got an interesting record, right? Like, I've always wanted to talk to Doty.
He worked in disinformation, bro. You know,
Yeah,
like
just
he
to
was a
press him.
disinformation. So it's kind of, you know.
Right. But I mean, you know, Lou was counterintelligence. Like these guys are trained in that type of thing. But Doty specifically was very much tasked and with, you know, kind of muddying the waters, right? So could be seeing that. If now I'll say this, if Jason is telling the truth, I mean, let's think about his experience, right? Like this being that he was apparently 3 feet away from, this blue humanoid. Really interesting. That he would be one of another 40 people that have possibly something similar to say, plus David Grush. I mean, if you take all of the whistleblowers that have ever said anything, or witnesses, whatever you'd like to call them, because we got to be specific. I don't want to make Steve Bassett mad, because I know he gets mad when people say whistleblower in certain instances and it's not actually a whistleblower. That's a lot of people telling you that something extraordinary is going on. Like, I mean, seriously, like these are trained witnesses. Like, I immediately think of Fravor as a really good example, right? Like, Fravor's telling the truth. Like, I would bet any amount of money that he's telling the truth. Like, Grush is an interesting case. We don't know what he's seen firsthand. So, like, that's it's difficult to weigh there because he's had information given to him. But I trust that he has gone through a rigorous process of vetting the people that he spoke to. I mean, and then I take into consideration my own personal experiences, what I saw in the woods as a child, what I saw a few weeks ago right in front of me on the road. Like, I combine that with these accounts. I mean, this wins in court. It wins in court. We've put people in prison for life on less anecdotal evidence. And we're still having these debates, or at least some people are having debates on whether or not UFOs are real to begin with. Like, I'm amazed that that's still going on.
Well, I think
so can one of you clarify for me, what I don't understand is when people are saying he's fake, okay? What do they mean when they say that? Because in my head, let's just say I wake up one day and I'm like, you know what? it seems like it would be really fun to pretend to be a whistleblower and get all this attention. So I'm just gonna go on some podcast in some space and start spouting off stuff. But then an hour in and people are grilling me, you just know, like, you're not going to be able to withstand the heat, and you're going to be like, oh, never mind. Like, this was a terrible idea. You know, I'm not actually a whistleblower. I, confess to everything, in my opinion. So, I mean, the fact that he was willing to answer question after question after question and put these statements out there and put his reputation on the line. Are people just saying he's doing this just for fun, or people think he's being like paid to, like, for disinformation? Do people think he's crazy? When people say he's fake, like, what do they mean by that?
Probably all of those things, right? Like, I mean, my take is that the way he withstood the heat, and there were some weird things going on prior to his appearance that Astral knows a lot about, like, these other gentlemen that were kind of hovering around X a little bit, and then all of a sudden here's Jason. To me, if his claims are false, if the story he is telling is fabricated, he is possibly a disinformation agent, which, again...
See, that's the only thing that makes sense to me, too.
That's right. Like, do I think... Now, as far as doing this for fun, you would have... I mean, if you considered, putting yourself under that much pressure and public spotlight and showing your face and all of that, and then being called a liar, like, if that's fun for you, then you're crazy, right? Like,
right.
Didn't he?
And he's apparently gone through all the processes legally.
Right. Question for you guys: didn't he, like, was he hovering on different sites, and because didn't he go on GoofOn before he went on the spaces, and and he shared there that he was who he was, I believe, if I saw the clip correctly. Was it just that they didn't run with it and kind of like take him down the road of questioning, that it didn't kind of go forward, maybe, and that's why this kind of went where it went the other night?
Maybe they didn't believe him.
I think you see like this stuff really over on Twitter of like, or X. It happens, but nobody really recognizes, like, stuff happens, and then you're like 3 months later, that's like, yo, that happened on X. Like, like that information was released,
Yeah, that's
I knew David Grush's name, like, a certain amount of time, we'll say, before his name was out.
So I do want to say, I want to make a couple points. I think that, to me, Chris Mellon, to me, is the smartest of the smartest, the brainstorming, the guy behind a lot of this.
Yeah,
he's in James Fox documentary coming out, right? To me, he's got the most important reputation to have.
Yes.
Do you think that James Fox and Chris Mellon wouldn't vet the most important whistleblower in their upcoming film?
Right.
And that Chris Mellon would put himself out there at the risk of his whole reputation as somebody who might be fake or not? I don't
think so either. And
I think that to me, the documentary is called The Program. I think that Jason Sands could be a part of that, a part of the program. And I think 40 whistleblowers may not line up with the same story. And like Eric Davis might not agree with Jason Sands, but that doesn't mean they weren't a part of the program, and their job wasn't compartmentalized. Because in the remote viewing program, people in the remote viewing program were remote viewing secret locations. They weren't like in the water cooler talking about where they were remote viewing, right? Like, they're not like discussing any of this. They're not allowed to.
Right.
And so I would figure like a lot of this stuff James Fox is actually putting together, and that I can't confirm the exact testimony of all of these, but all of these people were involved in some way in this program. And so like, that's what I feel like is really happening, is like Jason Sands' individual testimony. Okay, but what we have now and what just happened is an opportunity for independent researchers in the community to directly have contact with the whistleblower. And not have any gatekeepers or media or people to be like, oh, hold on, like, you can't ask that question, you can't get that information.
Or even people within the community who've been in the community for a very long time, who have a certain narrative that they want it to play out. Even if they want the truth, they may have a certain narrative that they want it to play out with. And I think that like this type of thing blows that out of the water. Why do you think that James Fox, Leslie Keane, and who else were logged on to that call that night? Unless
James
they
Fox
were
wasn't in the space.
Oh, he wasn't. It wasn't James Fox,
right? What?
I think he was. Yeah, somebody said he was in for like 20 or 30 minutes as listener.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then and I know, yeah. So Leslie Keane was, I guess, amongst the crowd too. I
Yeah.
mean,
and
I
that
guess
makes
they
me
just
wonder.
wanted to see what was going on.
Yeah,
I
they
doubt
want to
he
know-
gets on Spaces very often.
No, they want to know what he was saying because how it would affect the film, I imagine.
I would imagine a
That's
lot of
part of
people
it.
got a text that night and was like, Jason
Oh,
Sands is on a space. Like,
yes,
toot, toot,
yes.
oh
Yeah.
shit. Like,
And they're like, let me see this. What is he saying? Because they know what he was gonna say in the film, you know?
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, and so it seems to me that they are somewhat, I mean, why would they hop in the space if he wasn't legitimate?
And you know what? There's a really
Like
important
when I tell my
point
story, nobody's hopping in a space. I mean,
for both of you. Like, could you imagine?
it's true.
That just registered.
I
funny.
mean,
That's so true. That's a good point.
not because
So-
it's not legitimate. I'm just, my story is not relevant to a lot of people. But I mean, if
and
Leslie
you know what? He
hopped
had
into
like,
me telling my story, you
All
might
right,
want to wonder.
before the space, he had like 40 followers. He has like 3,500 now. It's like,
That was bound to
People
happen
wanna
too,
know.
right?
People
So
wanna know.
I have a question for you ladies, because I've been hearing this kind of floating around over the past few days.
Oh dear.
Are you under the impression that Jason is the only whistleblower in this documentary?
You know, I don't know the answer to that. I have not heard.
I know
otherwise.
the answer to that.
Oh, okay. Well, here's
Are
what
you allowed? Are you allowed to say the answer to
you
that?
got to drop it now. You got to say now.
I don't know the number, but Jason is not the only whistleblower in
Okay.
this documentary,
Okay.
apparently, from what I
Okay.
understand.
makes sense.
I'm not, and I wasn't told that I couldn't say that. So
Yeah.
I have a
You know,
question.
I was not under the impression. I was under the impression that there was going to be multiple people speaking out,
yeah,
because with how James has been speaking about this documentary of like, this is the greatest one I've done so far. I mean, he's definitely putting it up on a bit of a pedestal. So
Yeah.
exactly.
I have a
Exactly.
question. Do you guys know his story enough? Astral, was this guy connected at all to the Virginia case or anything by any chance? Or any of his whistleblowers connected to that?
I
We don't know?
believe so.
So a couple weeks ago, since you're bringing up Virginia, I had heard, where did I hear it? Someone said that one of the whistleblowers in the documentary might be that military ex-gentleman. And I gotta reach out to Marco Leal, the guy who was James's partner in the documentary. I have like a good line of communication with him too.
I was just curious,
what
what being he, like when he told his story, did he say what the context was of why he was seeing a being? I guess I just missed that.
It sounded like it was kind of random. Like, if I remember correctly, someone told Jason that if he saw anybody on the side of the road, not to interact with them and like don't pick them up. And then I guess he somehow ran into this being, but didn't realize what was happening. Thought it was someone that was in trouble, like dying of hypothermia. And then that's when, I guess he soon came to the realization that this was not a human being per se, because they were telepathically communicating with him. And he
Okay.
Just being
I don't think the
designer of his jacket.
Virginia being had anything to do with, like, this was like a blue skin.
And I know it was blue, so I
This is
was different, but I
a
just
separate
didn't know.
morphology.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Very, very different.
Okay.
I think the Virginia case might, just based on what's available, the timing and everything, like if if everything goes our way and all the cards fall in the right direction for disclosure, the Virginia case might actually end up being the most important UFO case of all time. Actually, like just based on all of the gathered information, all of the witnesses, it's much more recent than Roswell.
That's right.
As much
yeah.
as Roswell was always king, like Virginia really could end up being.
Well, that's what I was
blows the
kind of
lid off
hoping this documentary would be covering. I was hoping it would have some more solid data from somebody on the inside who
It might. It could
because
very
I
well.
felt like early on James was talking about things like that when he was early on in the film, but I could be wrong.
It might be. It might have something to do with it. If that military X witness is involved, then yeah, definitely.
I think Jason Sands is the military ex-witness, bro. I think that's who it is.
No, because
that would be
military
crazy.
X, no, because military X in the documentary didn't speak English.
Oh, I didn't know. I didn't know that.
He was subtitled. If I recall correctly, it had him turned away. He had his back to the camera, and if I remember correctly,
okay, I know who you're talking about now.
Yes.
The one, where it was like they hit his face, like you just saw his legs. Is that like the one you're talking about?
He had his back turned to the camera.
Yeah,
and he was speaking Spanish, if I remember correctly.
Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah.
Interesting.
I'll go back and watch it just to clarify and make sure, but I'm 99.9% sure this was someone Brazilian. Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
From the Brazilian military.
Okay.
That would be military X.
But let's talk a little bit about, okay, so we've had disclosure come now, quote unquote disclosure, through official government channels, kind of the media. And then now we have this guy coming out, like you said, Astral, just to the public. This kind of changes everything. Talk a little bit about your thoughts on that and what it means for the future of kind of disclosure.
Yeah, I think it's the big shift.
Yep.
Yeah, I do think, for us to be like, if you look at the last year with after Grush comes out and gives his testimony, the frustration has been for Congress to be able to actually get that information, get that evidence, get something leeway, some sort of, and what you're seeing now from like Chris Mellon and, sharing the screenshots, him going back and forth with Arrow and David Grush, like all of that is a frustration that's happening with whistleblowers. And even all of the whistleblowers, I don't think I've heard one whistleblower or anybody who's gone to Arrow and said, that was a good interview, I feel good about it. And so all of these other whistleblowers who are people, insiders who have information, are really paying attention to this. And they're like, man, I can't go forward in this way.
Yeah.
And so I think, like I said, like I feel like Jason didn't intend for it to be this huge Twitter space thing. But I think now whistleblowers are like, you know what? There's this avenue that I have that I can directly take questions. And to me, it adds to the credibility. And that's just me because I'm on Spaces. I'm hosting Spaces weekly. And so if somebody came up and they were willing to answer questions, like I was the one who accepted Green Street up and some of the skeptical people to ask those questions because I knew that they were going to ask those
history, and they're going to say, he didn't let the hard questions come through. Yeah.
We need those. We need those hard questions. We need those ones that really dig in, the respectful questions, right?
Street's questions were fine too. And I thought he came across fine. I was actually kind of impressed, to be honest with you. Like if that's how he carried himself all the time, I'd probably like the guy a lot more, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like seriously, I thought he was being fine.
But I think like even how this is played out in the couple days afterwards with the UAP United page and Jason Sands being able to answer some of these questions. He just talked about Doty and Eric Davis. These are direct claims. Like if we were trying to get that, and I'm a big fan of Grush. I believe Grush. I'm a supporter of Grush. But if we were trying to ask Grush questions directly about what skeptics were saying or what people are saying publicly, it's extremely difficult. We wouldn't be able to do that. With Sands, and some of these whistleblowers are like, you know what? Let me give this information directly to the community. And X in Twitter Spaces and some of these new avenues, podcasts, like, you know, being able to get this information directly. And I see UFO Twitter as the best researchers in the field right now.
Wow.
You know what
I
I'm
agree
saying?
with
Like
that.
I do
agree with
see
that.
I do see in Reddit, even Reddit, right? Like
Yeah,
Reddit,
no,
UFO
exactly.
Twitter, they dig in. They really do the research, not just
100%.
give us opinions. They really try and confirm information. So if we're able to get the information directly from the whistleblowers of what had happened and confirm it, deny it, debunk it,
Vet it.
whatever, for all of these whistleblowers, this to me is a better avenue than waiting for, you know, James Fox documentary. I can't wait for it, but for waiting for stuff to come out,
Yeah.
that's given to us from people who are almost like trying to milk it in a way, but like still give us the information. I want the raw. I want the raw stuff. I want everything so that I can
That's
decide and
a good point.
cross-reference stuff. So I think the media shift to me is very refreshing that's taking place.
So interesting that you say that, because I do think that you know, when I started Twitter Spaces, what, 3 years ago, Astral, it was almost for me, me and my little self, a coming out party of my own, like admitting to the world that this is who I am, this is what I experience, and I'm coming public with it, with my name attached, means that like that for me, that's like my credibility is on the line. Like for somebody to do that, like they're putting their credibility completely on the line. And like obviously for somebody like me, nobody knows, but for somebody like that happens, you have to be ready. You have to be ready to share your truth in that moment, because if people start asking, that could happen to any of us, any one of us at any moment, if you think about it.
And from a very human perspective, I totally get if he is listening in on Spaces and he knows that he has something to add. I mean, you only can hold back so long. It's like, let the floodgates. I got to get this out. I got to, you know, I got to let people know what I experienced, you know, so I get that. I mean, it's just like, F this, I'm going to tell everybody, you know, like I totally get that from a human perspective.
Absolutely agree with you, Ariel.
You know, we just became like, if he really does turn out to be legit, like X just became like the front line of the battle. And I was there and Astral was there when it happened. Like that's weird. Think about it. Like
well, you can see the polarization that happened within the community of just
that's the scary part. To me, that's the scary part. And that's where the polarization happens. And that's where it puts the fear into other people who have had real experiences to come forward, because they're afraid of that same. But at the same time, like you kind of said, Astral, I mean, if it happened to you, and you know, you kind of have to be prepared for that kind of reaction if you're willing to come out. Yeah. You have to be prepared for people not to believe you. I mean, that's just the bottom line.
UFO Twitter really, really frustrates me sometimes, because I really wish we would shift our perspective to more just looking at each other like a big dysfunctional family, because in a dysfunctional family, you can have differing opinions. You can have good faith arguments. And then at the end of the day, you still love each other. Yeah. So like, why can't we, I mean, because it just gets so hateful sometimes. I'm like, guys, we're all on the same team. It's okay to disagree. It's okay to push back with each other. But like at the end of the day, can we still just like love each other?
I love that take. That's why I say and do all the things that I do specifically. Like I'm always trying to, you know, say the nicest thing possible to like someone's, you know, sour comment towards me, or like, you know, Digby, my podcast partner, he can be a little brash. I mean, so can I too. Like he's quicker to just defend himself, whereas like if someone says something, you know, oh, you're a grifter, blah blah, because you know I get these weird comments sometimes. We all do, where they're like, oh, blah, blah. I'm just like, okay, thanks. You know, I hope your family's well. You know, hope you have a roof over your head and food to eat. Like at the end of the day, like I don't like talking badly really about anybody, honestly. Like I might disagree with some people, and some people I'm just like, don't care for them that much, but I don't hate anybody. I don't. I really don't. Like we had Matt Ford on our show, and there, you know, there's him and John Greenwald have like a thing going, like a rivalry. So, you know, Matt made a couple jokes about John, and and then it turned into this really crazy segment with a Mitch McConnell
Oh,
dildo. Like that was
the
like it was just
dildo.
this crazy thing. Did you see that?
I did it. But I keep hearing
It
the dildo
oh,
comments by Matt
it
Ford.
was insane. It was so unexpected. So like John had snipped our show and Bob, you know what I mean? He had, yeah, and if it were me, I'd be pissed too. But then I commented and was like, I really hope one of these days you guys can just like come on the same show, or you know what I
Mhm.
mean, and just have like a chat. At the end of the day, we want to know what's going on.
Yep.
Yep.
Experiencers want to know the root
What the
of their
hell's going on?
experiences, and you know,
Yeah.
or like I think of Fringe. Fringe comes to mind because she's had you know, experiences that have negatively
Right.
impacted her life that were really traumatic and you know, just
Yeah.
ultimate distress, right? Like things that are so dark and hard to
Yeah.
wrap your head around. Like those
Yeah.
people deserve answers.
Absolutely. That's exactly how I
That's
feel.
why we need to really like we need to kind of, you know, join arms with the Green Streets and the McWests and all that. It's like at the end of the day, we're all just human beings here down on Earth having this experience, running around trying to figure out what the hell is going on. Like
Yep.
I know there are things that I know and there are things that I'm not sure of and there are things that I lean towards. I know something's out there and somebody has
Absolutely.
giant triangles. Somebody
Mhm.
has those. I don't know who I don't know who has
Right.
them, but they're real. I've seen it.
Yeah.
It goes right over my head.
Yeah.
Somebody has little red orbs that can dance around each other. Saw that, you know, like
Yep.
why
Yeah.
don't we just take a step back instead of arguing semantics in the name of ATIP and blah 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 blah? Like all of that could be bullshit. Like Lou Elizondo could literally be, you know, I don't know, like a trickster or something. Like he could be totally full of crap. It doesn't change the fact that
Right.
we have
Right.
historical record that
So
literally
true.
I
details
think that's
these
important.
objects and these
Yep.
types of occurrences dating back to the beginning of time. Like
Yep.
literally. I mean, there's reports of flying saucers, literally flying saucers, like that morphology that date back to like BCE. Like
Right.
literally, like Alexander the Great.
I was gonna say that. I was gonna
He
say
was-
Alexander the Great.
You know which story I'm talking about. He was going to try
Yep.
to take his armies across a river,
Yep.
and these two silver discs literally swooped down at them and prevented them from crossing the river, scared their elephants, all types of stuff. And I know that there's a lot of different religions on the planet and different belief systems and such. And I was doing a little bit of research recently, and it would appear that the Bible has been translated so many different times, and you know, and it's like a game of telephone, right?
Yep.
In one ear, and now here we are in modern day. It's been thousands of years since then,
Yep.
and it would appear that the original translations of the Bible would suggest that there are a lot more beings present than just God. You know what I mean? Like it's not just God. There's like
A lot of
council.
different types of beings. Absolutely.
Yes, yeah. Like, and
Yeah.
again, I'm not discounting the idea of this ultimate force that gives life to everything. I think that,
Right.
like God and consciousness field for me are almost like they're the same thing.
Mhm.
It's not a being.
Mhm.
It's a force of nature that encompasses all forces of
All
nature,
forces, yeah.
essentially.
Mhm.
I don't discount the power of prayer. I don't discount the power of you know, a belief in a higher power at all. It's nothing like that. But what I saw in the Bible really struck a chord with me. It really
Mhm.
did. This, you know, you take in certain instances, right? In certain areas, if you take God and make it plural, all of a sudden in the original Hebrew, it makes a lot more grammatical sense. Like even literally, boom, Genesis 1:1. It really says, if you really do your research, what it actually says is, "We will create man in our image."
Yep.
And again, that doesn't mean there's no God. It's just it's
Mhm.
another link. It's another rung on the ladder, essentially.
Mhm.
Like I really think that I think we were seeded by somebody, or so, you know, an intelligent civilization came down here and either created us or they experimented with early hominids. Here we are, we arose, and they left, and maybe they're still watching us. but that still allows for an ultimate, force. It still allows for a God. Experiencers talk about that, asking these entities about God, and a lot of these, the Greys and the Mantids and such have told abductees like, oh yeah, that's source, or you know what I mean? Like they acknowledge that type of thing. So, and again, at the end of the day, I could just be wrong. Like I could literally just be wrong.
Yeah, well,
I don't
that's
know.
like that leans into the free experience, the free research study, which looked at 6,000 experiencers, and with non-human intelligence, right? Like I'm a science nerd when it comes to this stuff. But
I love it.
Introduced me to this.
yeah, so they looked at experiencers, and then they got very detailed questions, and then accumulated all the similarities in the types of beings in their experiences. So there was thousands of different types of beings, from grays to reptilians to light beings, to Bigfoot, orb energy, all of it. And so like you get to see like 50% of the most interesting stat from it was that 80% of experiencers felt like they had an out of body element to it. That was
amazing.
that was the most interesting, is that there was sort of like this altered state of consciousness aspect to a lot of people who have had experiences with non-human intelligence.
I believe that.
Or something, something that has to do with experiencing time in a very different way. I was just at the Ozark UFO conference a couple of weekends ago, and one of the guys that shared, he was an experiencer, and it's always so interesting because I'm not an experiencer, but it's always so interesting to listen to experiencers, and there are just so many common elements. I mean, just even as someone who's just outside of that, and I listen to these common elements that pop up, and he shared some of the experiences that he had, and there was always something, it wasn't always the same, but there was always something strange happening with time. Like either there was missing time, or time seemed to slow down, or time seemed to stand still. And so that there is something there, isn't there?
Absolutely. If you think about it too, if these beings are able to manipulate time, which would explain some of the things that we see their craft doing, going from here to here, it might not that might not necessarily be about speed. They may have figured out something completely different, and it may be about time. Jacques Vallée, in one of his books, had said that he had kind of hypothesized that these entities are able to do a lot more within a single frame of what's called Planck time than what we would be able to do. So we could be sitting here going about our day. Me and Ariel could be playing tic-tac-toe, and these beings could have already built a ship and done a million other things, and we wouldn't even know it. Pretty miraculous stuff. Ariel, I got a question for you. So now correct me if I'm wrong, and I apologize if I'm wrong. You're a Christian, right?
Yes.
So I'm really curious how all of this fits into your biblical perspective on everything. Like how do you merge those two worlds together?
I mean, it's a great question, and it's something that I'm still working on, and it's been a journey. I feel like I'm very strong in my faith and what I believe of how life came about, and like you said, an all-powerful creator. But I also know, I also am very firm in my belief that there's non-human intelligence that exists. So now I'm on the journey of going, okay, how do I integrate these two? And to me, it just comes down to, I feel like Christians love to put God in a box, and they love to say we're special, we're the only ones he created, because the Bible really only talks about us. Number one, that's not true. The Bible talks about a lot of different crazy things, and Christians just aren't ready to really dive in and go there. But there are some theologians, and there's definitely some Christians who are willing to tackle those subjects. And I've enjoyed a lot of those books, like Michael Heiser. He talks a lot about divine counsel theology, which he thinks when you are saying how in the beginning of Genesis, they say, let us make man in our image. The traditional explanation, which is never really settled for me. The traditional explanation is that God was talking to the Holy Spirit and Jesus. So basically the Trinity, God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit. So a lot of people would say God was talking to his Son and his Spirit and himself. And that's why it says that. However, Dr. Michael Heiser, he kind of coined the term divine council theology, which is basically he was talking to other divine beings, whether that be angels, whether it be beings that we don't even really know exist. Because if you believe God is outside of time, has always existed, I mean, think about what could have come before us. I mean, we are just in a long line, like a parade. Like we're just the next, Earth and humans is just the next step in a long parade of species that have likely come before us. So who knows who was there when God said, let's create humans? Who knows what other beings were with him and were witnessing this. So that's just a little side. That's a little an aside. But as far as how I just totally integrated of like, the really theological questions of, would aliens need Jesus to die for them too? I mean, I don't have answers to that. And I am nowhere near, like, like being able to kind of know where I stand on that. I'm on my journey, but I appreciate you asking that.
Yeah, I was hoping that wasn't like too personal.
Oh, absolutely not. Not at all.
Faith is very, you know what I mean? It's very deep. I was raised a Catholic. I'm a spiritual agnostic, as I like to say now. But I know I've read the Bible front to back. Trust me, I know it. I know more about the Bible than some people that probably go to church, which is kind of weird, right? But I thought it was a fascinating book. Are you familiar with the work of Timothy Alberino? I think is how you say his name.
Yeah.
I thought his work was kind of interesting because it again took the Bible, and if you go and look through that lens, like you were saying, there's a lot of other beings in that book. Like seriously. And I honestly I feel like the God of the Old Testament and the God of the New Testament are like two different beings. Like seriously, their characteristics, behavior, everything are so vastly different from one another that makes me question like, well, what does that mean? Like did God have like an identity crisis? Did he experience ego death? Like, you know what I mean? It's just, I don't know, right? Like at the end of the day, I wasn't alive then. I wasn't alive for the crucifixion, the resurrection. I have no idea. I will say that the Shroud of Turin is quite interesting and seems to indicate that potentially, if legit, that something miraculous happened under that cloth. Pretty crazy. But I can't confirm it. I have no idea. So, some people disagree with me on this take. Like, my boss is very Christian, and he says, well, no, that's not how you go about it. But I have decided that I'm never going to know that probably until after I die. So I am literally just going to try to be as good of a person as I can. Try to love my neighbor. Try to treat people the way that I want to be treated. I don't want to murder anybody or do any of those things. And I think that I will be okay.
Yeah, I really like Timothy Alberino because he takes the abduction phenomenon very seriously. He is one of the few Christians who is not shying away from the abduction phenomenon. He is going, this is happening. This is very real. He has looked at all of John Mack, his research, Carla Turner's research, and he has really dug into that and come at it from a Christian perspective. And so I really respect him for that.
He's because
he is, but a lot of Christians are just not willing to go there, but he is.
Yeah, I get that too. Like when you're so firm in your convictions and your faith, especially if like you're from like the Bible Belt, evangelical, I get that. Like, those people are convinced and there's no changing their minds. And you know what?
Not true, Tom. Not true.
Yeah, well, I guess it would take a lot.
My mind. I changed my mind over the years.
Were you an evangelical Christian?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
No kidding. Wow. No, you were the first evangelical Christian that I've met that is now in I guess the UFO camp. That is fascinating.
Yeah. Actually, I was very much I was a youth pastor. I did it all. Preschool children's pastor. My husband was a pastor. We did it all. And now I don't even call myself anything, I guess. I feel, even though Ariel is still obviously refers to herself as a Christian, but I feel like I'm in the same place. I'm on my journey. I'm seeking. It doesn't mean that I won't end up back there per se. I just think that I needed to explore, all of the, I needed to deconstruct all of the programming that has gone into my life. And I was an adult Christian.
Because you had a new reality. Like you had a new reality that you had to come to terms with.
Right, exactly. And it's crazy because even when I was in the evangelical church and stuff, I used to listen to preachers talk about UFOs. There's this one guy, and he, but they came on it strictly from a demonic perspective. So that was the only perspective I had heard from the Christian faith. And so that's disappointing. But once you go through an experience, and for me, I was kind of deconstructing my faith anyway before I went through the experience. And in some ways I tell myself, like, once I had my experiences, it was almost like an awakening to source more than I was, more connection than I was for a while. Right. And I tell people a lot of times, it sounds insane, but I feel like my UFO experience was more authentic than my Christian conversion experience, which I know sounds heretical to say, but it was that real for me, versus a cognitive decision that I made when I did the conversion. It was not like a full experience. That's all I know how to, to say about
perspective too. Like perhaps what you experienced was God,
right.
We don't
know.
That's
maybe
what I'm saying. The UFO phenomenon is part of that. It's all kinds of things, I think. Maybe they're angels, right? Like, and that's just what they used to call them. And the reason that they have wings is just like, an analogy for the fact that they can fly. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It's so complicated. But at the same time, I feel like it's really interesting that, like, I feel like the UFO community is in some ways going backwards to go forwards. And what I mean by that is that, like, there's a lot more acknowledgement or interest in things that people used to either write off as absolutely nuts, or you believed in it if you were religious. Like, there is a blending going on right now. And Diana
Pasolka, the metaphysical, right? Astral.
Right, the metaphysical, and honestly, and we talk about this a lot amongst ourselves, me, Paul, and Digby in our group chat. This comes up all the time. It just came up again today, actually, ironically. Diana Pasolka was talking about this. She mentioned somebody, I forget the gentleman's name, but he said that it would appear that maybe we're seeing the formation of a new modern religion. And then not in that that's how people are acting and reacting to things, but that this intelligence comes down, it influences humanity. Maybe certain religions pop up, right? Years go by, they do it again. Time goes on, and now here we are, and it's happening again. Like, you got your Chris Bledsoes, you have all these new experiencers popping up. Like, this may be the beginning of a new religion, not because human beings are interpreting things a certain way, but because those things are influencing us in a certain way, and it's their choice, and they are doing it for a reason. Maybe it's a process, like it's a growth, it's evolution. I don't know, but I do see the signs of that. Absolutely.
I think you nailed it right there. I mean, that's kind of my little secret theory. It's about the process, and the process is somewhat about ego death and transformation. And I think that some of that happens to people when they go through ontological shock and when they're experiencing things like this. And I think for me, that was a key element and a key takeaway, and which is probably one of the reasons I think my experience was positive, even though it didn't feel positive early on, because I was going through ego death. As you're transferring out of that, it's just such a release. It's such a freedom.
I know what ego death feels like. I experienced it recently. I did
the
a
dark
DMT
night of the soul.
breakthrough.
Can you guys explain what that feels like? Because intellectually, I understand what an ego death is, but can you understand like how you feel before and then how you feel after? Maybe
That
not.
one, Chris?
Or maybe not.
I got to think about it for a second.
Let me maybe just say is based on remote viewing is what I
Okay.
can maybe explain. So it's sort of like if you try remote viewing for the very first time. So I post an envelope on my Twitter space with a hidden picture. And I ask people to just draw or describe what's inside the envelope. And I think what a lot of the times I hear is beginner's luck is somebody who goes in with the mentality of like, this isn't anything, like I'm not going to really care about the results, like I'm just trying this, it's not anything. Their ego isn't involved. And so they have a very good first submission and they're like, oh man, like I'm actually kind of good at this, like maybe I'm actually like, you know, one of the chosen ones or something. And so then the next time
It doesn't work.
they don't do well, like the next 5 times, right? They go in with this sort of mentality of like, oh, I know what I'm doing, like, you know, like I'm actually kind of good at this, whatever. And so like it's the ego coming into play. And I think that it's the realization that like you have to disconnect yourself from that to be able to have these sort of type of experiences.
Yeah.
Interesting. That is so interesting.
Yeah.
What about you,
And I
Tom?
So it's almost like you delete expectation away. I experienced this too. Like the first time I actually did a serious submission, I did pretty good, and I had a streak going. Then I had a crappy week, and I had a decent one, and I was getting like a lot of bleed through from like other people's submissions, which was interesting too. But now I experienced actual ego death because I went through a DMT ceremony. Second time that I had done it in a ceremonial setting. And the first time I didn't go as far as having to break through. I just wanted to kind of feel things out.
Yeah.
This time I did the 3 puffs. Here we go. We're getting, you know, Morpheus is greeting you in the Matrix. It's happening. And there's a lot of things that I experienced that I can only describe, that I know I saw them. I know I experienced them, but I can't visualize them. Like I saw shapes that were clearly more than 3-dimensional. I don't even know how to describe that to you. I saw colors that are not a part of our light spectrum. Like it was like green, but it wasn't green. The ego death part and the intelligences that were around me, like there were entities present, but the ego death is it's so foreign and yet so familiar at the same time. That's what I still can't get it out of my head. I'm like, okay, I'm a human being that was born into this world, and the very first second I came out of my mother's womb, I am an individual. That is the only experience I've ever had, is a self. Like there's it's not like I can go and put a helmet on and experience the opposite. Like I have no frame of reference to even know what that should feel like. And yet I felt it. And I mean, words will never quite get you there, but it's like you melt into everything. You are a drop of paint on the canvas of the universe, and then someone comes, smudges you, and now you are the canvas. You went from being green, surrounded by red, blue, yellow, and orange, and now it's all one color. You are everything. And I'm like, how is it possible I felt that when I don't have any frame of reference? How was it that I know that I saw colors that in regular waking life I cannot see? Like infrared, ultraviolet, those types of things. Like our brains are not wired to experience those things, and yet I did. So my theory with that, at least, just to kind of go off on a little bit of a tangent, is that, and this is what my next YouTube is about, actually. It's a shameless plug, but it's really fascinating. I think consciousness is non-local. We are receiving it like radios, and our brain has like a filtration system, which to me is almost like it's so perfect that it comes off like somebody designed it. It's really wild. It's like, here comes consciousness. It gets beamed down into us somehow, some way, from outside of regular 3-dimensional time and space, and yet our brains filter things in such a way that it makes it suitable for us to exist down here without like sensory overload and such. It's like,
Right.
how the hell did that happen? But when you do DMT or experience the ego death and go through all of those types of things, that filter gets shut off.
Mm.
I feel like that filter is not present when you are doing that type of thing, and it can happen even through transcendental meditation. Some people have reported similar things, going into like sensory deprivation tanks and things of that sort. Doing binaural beats even. So there's a way to tinker with that. But I gotta be honest, there are no words available in the language that I speak that will ever properly describe to you what ego actually feels like. You just have to experience it. It's like the Matrix. It really is. It's like, one cannot be told what the Matrix is. You have to see it for yourself. It really is like that. The only thing I can say is that I completely lost my sense of self-identity, and it was replaced with macro identity, as I would call it. I am now everything. It's like you feel like you're God. Like you do. I don't say that disrespectfully. It's like you feel like you have become everything else. Like you have joined.
But before you do that, you feel completely.
It's scary.
Terrified. Yeah,
it's scary.
It's so weird that you're.
Hell.
I just wrote about it in my class because I had to write about an experience, and I saw this quote in a furniture store this week, which is, everybody should read it. It's really long, so I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it's basically about fear and the idea of the river is terrified before it enters the ocean, and it's just so afraid, and it's so vast and it's so big, and basically the bottom line is at the end it disappears into the ocean and becomes part of the ocean. And that's the quote I used to describe the experience I felt. It was a freeing experience. It was like the darkest experience of my life, like personally, emotionally. Like it was this negotiation with myself, I guess. I say that it was like a negotiation with the universe. And it was a very conscious negotiation. It was very, it was a literal, like a dialogue. And I was weeping and embarrassingly, snotty and sad and depressed, but like also saying, I still choose this life, and I choose this lifetime, and I choose this timeline. I felt like I was negotiating. And then when I did that, I don't know, there was just like, I live with anxiety. I've always lived with anxiety all my life. I'm a big anxious person, but so many of my fears disappeared after that, Ariel. Like I live in fear. Like I'm worst case scenario, Chris. Ask anyone. They buy me the book, Worst Case Scenario Handbook. But like a lot of those fears just like lifted. Like that's when like everything changed for me. I can come out, I can be me. I don't care what people think about me. Like I don't care what people think about me, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You can't really care that much when you're talking about UFOs. You have to have your ego die a little bit. So, anyways, that's kind of what it was for me. But
that's how I felt with my precognitive dream of coming out and really, owning it. Really? Like having a dream in basically which I got robbed, I was in college and I got robbed, and 3 days later the exact scenario took place. And so that basically lifted my journey. Like that took my journey to another level of me analyzing the situation and being like, damn, like I had an actual dream of that taking place, and then looking into it, and I think that there's a deeper level of some of these experiences that are very synchronistic, that have a consciousness level to it, a high strangeness, is mentioned a lot. And I think like it's hard for other people to relate to it, because if I have a experience in which I think about my brother, and then he calls me the exact same time, like if I tell that to somebody else, it's not the same as like the actual synchronicity. And so I think these little subtle things really do take place a lot in different people, but it's tough to explain it and relate to everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's right. And Ariel notices that. I mean, you get synchronicities and you know,
Mhm.
but I think the more you're into the topic, you kind of recognize them more. It's kind of like when you buy a new car, you start seeing that car everywhere.
Yeah,
There
the
is
numbers thing. I know
activity.
UFO Twitter talks a lot about the numbers, like seeing the same time over and over again.
Happens to me a
I have
lot.
not, that has not happened to me yet,
Every
although
day.
I really
Every
don't
day.
like numbers, so maybe that will never happen for me because like I don't, I mean math
But we
was just,
need math.
I know math was just not my thing, so like maybe
Like,
numbers,
what do you
it's
mean
just
you
like
don't like
That's the
numbers.
first
Now I
time
know
I've
what you
ever heard
mean.
someone say that. Like, I don't like numbers.
I really don't. I do not. Numbers and me, we do not get along.
That's
Like
7.
Oh,
He's a dick.
that's not
Like,
true.
oh man, that's so funny.
That's
But that happens
hilarious.
to me every day. Like, but
Me too.
so like I get we recognize it maybe more, but what happens to me is that like I've experimented with this and it still happens. Like I can set my clocks to like random times
Different
with like
time.
blindfolded type shit. Like my car, I can change, my alarm clock in my room, and I swear to God, I will still somehow end up seeing like 11:11 or
Yeah.
5:55. Like seriously, it does not
And
fail.
mine's like
I could be in a
223.
grocery store, it doesn't matter. Still happens.
223. So 223. Every time how do I look at the clock
Really?
at 220? It only comes twice a day, but it feels like it's more than that, right?
It happens to
And
me
one of
like
them I'm asleep
literally.
at.
I had it happen one time so many times in one day that like I thought I was going crazy. Like seriously, it was and it was what was it that time? It was threes. And like I saw it at the regular time, but then I saw it at like 9 o'clock at night, like on something in my house that wasn't set right. And then I saw it again and like it was happening in places that it just shouldn't have been. And I'm like, dude, what is this? Like, why does this keep happening? But when I see it, I try to take a step back, like, oh, maybe the trying to tell me something. Like,
yeah.
who's to say? Oh,
Hey guys,
synchronicities mean something.
while we're chatting, and I don't know, while we have people in the live stream, I can't if there's any questions or anything, feel free to put them up on the comments and we can ask one of the guys if you guys have any questions. I just thought I'd mention that while
Definitely.
we're talking. So
I wanted to
Yeah.
ask everybody, going forward with the Jason Sands, what do you expect maybe out of the next couple weeks to happen? Because we've had James Fox basically come out and be like, James, he's who he says he is. And I don't think he's going to take him out of the documentary. Like I don't think he's going to chop him out. I think this only adds to, like I posted today, I think the documentary is going to be one of, if not the biggest ever in the topic. And I am more excited because this adds to me, it's not about one person's testimony. It's about the entire program and showing
right.
like this has been hidden. Like this is the program that we want access to. And we want to uncover this. And so like any way we can get that out there and people to really start digging in. Whistleblowers coming out on Twitter Spaces, that's a great situation in my eyes. But I think that's just hints to the transparency that's coming in the media shift. But no.
I hope,
What will
I mean,
happen?
yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens next. And I'm not sure. I think I was going to say, oh, it'd be nice to see some media come up and back it, but will it? I don't know. To be honest, I don't think it matters anymore. I
As of
feel like,
yet,
yeah, I feel like it doesn't. I- It'll be interesting. Well, let me ask you guys this. What are the biggest, um, and not complaints or concerns, I guess, that people
Science,
have?
the
That
science
people
to
have
me.
with
All right.
him. No, with
I,
Jason
no,
oh,
Sands.
with him,
it's science. Okay.
With
the
Sands. Yeah.
UAP task force thing.
Yep. The
'cause-
forum versus task force. Yep.
right, which
Can
I
you
would like
explain that?
clarification on. So he had originally apparently said that he worked for the UAP task force, but then later said that he didn't, and he was a part of this forum, I guess, online digitally, that was
A part of the
comprised of
task force.
right. So I don't know, maybe he just misspoke. Like to be fair, the guy was under the gun, so
Yeah.
we need clarification on that. I feel like so the 20 and back thing, right? A lot of people, as soon as they heard that phrase, the first thing that popped into their head was, "Oh, Corey Good," and then they link that to the fact that he's talking about a blue being. And they're like, oh, Corey Good, 20 and back, blue avians. But you got to read a little bit deeper than that. He clarified what he meant by that. You know, maybe it's just a nickname. Maybe Corey Good was given some information at some point from someone, and then he took it and ran with it and, you know, spun his own narrative. Who knows? And the being that he described is not the same being that Corey Good was describing. He was not talking about an avian being. He was talking about a humanoid. Like, just because it's the same color doesn't mean that his story is now bunked. Like, that's not enough to disprove
I felt like there was a lot of like craziness over the blue.
It was immediate because some people just
like the first thing
they hear one thing, that's it. Yeah, like, and he never said that like 20 and back was real. Like, again, I'll read from that statement. He said, I clarified that while 20 and back is not an official program name, it refers to a significant, though difficult, experience within the programs I was part of. So,
I wonder what he means.
Again, he might not, he may just be talking about a duration of time that was 20 years or something similar. He may, like, there is absolutely no specific reference being made to him going off planet. Like, that's not, you know what I mean? Like, we need more clarification. I'll be really transparent and public about this. I reached out through somebody close to him, try to get him on the podcast. Because I have questions that I would like to ask
obviously, him. And I think he deserves a chance to be heard and to.
Did he respond to you?
So it wasn't directly to him. So like I wanted to ask him in the middle of the space, but I felt that that would be a little too like spotlight on me type situation, and I just didn't want to do it that way.
Yeah.
So I went through Courtney, the one that like I guess kind of edged him along to potentially come out and say something. I messaged her. Astral messaged me and was like, yo, you should try to get him on the podcast. And I was like, I want to. How should I go about this? So I messaged Courtney and just said, hey, listen, the invitation's there. I was under a lot of pressure. But I have, as someone who this means a lot to me, being that I've had experiences like this is a major significant part of my life. I would like to have him on the podcast. No judgment. Let him say what he wants. It's not to put him in a corner. Maybe some of the questions may come off as tough to some people, but to be fair, he has opened himself up to that scrutiny at this point.
Right.
And I think he knows that, so I don't think he'll take any respect. But you ask what we think is going to happen over the next couple of weeks. I'll be honest, I don't think much. I think the most we'll get is maybe some more clarifications. Basically like what we saw in the statement. But because he's made this statement, I don't expect too much. I think the next couple of weeks are going to be a little quiet.
That's what I think too. I agree completely. I was going to say the same thing. I think he's going to go quiet for a while, maybe pop up a little here and there, but I think he's going to lay low for a while. That would be my prediction. What do you think about the whole, people are talking about the UAP United thing, and they think it's just his profile and he's just created this for the sake of like creating credibility for himself. What do you think about that?
Possible. I don't know though, because
what do we know about it at all? Do we know anything about it?
I haven't even really looked into it. I've just heard some people making that type of claim, so I got to do some digging on that. There was that website that popped up too that said it was like his law firm, but
yeah, I did see that, and that was weird.
Yeah, he did say in the space though he was trying to start maybe like a foundation or something to facilitate whistleblowers coming out in such a way that it would be transparent, like other than
it wasn't that site, right? Because that law
no, it was that was
created
different.
Like within 24 hours of him being on the space. Digby told me that. I can't confirm that.
The law site was just created?
Yeah, so I had Digby.
Oh yeah, the law site is bullshit. I've created 50 WordPress sites myself.
All right.
I knew it was bullshit within 5 minutes, and then you look at the Wayback of the Wayback Machine of the ability to look at when the changes are made. Like, the changes were made. Like
you did that,
the first,
right?
Yeah. Like the the first edit and change was made in August or something of 2023, and then the last was April 22, which was the day after they changed all of the
It's almost
website and
like
added
somebody
basically
prepared
added
it
his
to
photo.
discredit him.
Yeah.
Yeah,
somebody
absolutely.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
The fact that they were doing it in the summer too.
Interesting,
They built
right?
it in the summer. I mean, if they know he's going to be a whistleblower on the film.
It was when he
Hmm.
first came out and his name was revealed. And you know, like he came out, and so somebody made that website basically in preemptives for him to come out. And so when he became public, the next couple of days, they just were
And-
like, oh, like let me
Wow.
just send this site to all the skeptics and all the and here's what
Right.
here's the issue. Here's the issue that I really had is that if you were a smart skeptic, if you were a real smart, you don't even have to be a smart person to look at that and know that in 5 minutes it's a fake website and it's bullshit. A lot of the people were like posting the website already and being like, is this Jason Sand's website? Like, is this really him? Like if you turn the tables and it was like about them, they would have debunked it in 5 seconds. They would have put in the work to look up the stuff to be like, no, this is bunk. They're trying to do this, but instead they're like, I don't know. Is this a real site or not? Like, come on, bro. Like, I can look at it in 5 minutes until
it's fake.
like 30 seconds. I can look at it.
It looked
It's
ridiculous.
Sans Jason.
Yeah.
My name is Sans
the name
Jason.
wasn't even right.
Yeah, even
made up
me,
people.
I am literally the most gullible person at times. Like my husband will be like, he will say the most outrageous things and I'll be like, what, really? And he's like, Ariel, what the heck is wrong with you? Like you will believe anything. And even me, I looked at that website and it was so bad that even I was just like, no.
It's not real.
Well, if that's the case, I may as well tell you now that I did in fact work at S4.
Yeah.
She's like, wait,
horrible.
hold on. You gotta check this.
Even the quickness to like
bullshit though.
But even the quickness to I think that one of the things that I've noticed is like people have been so quick to make a conclusion from what has happened a couple of days ago. And it's like, man, there's so much that still needs to be played out. And like we're getting this information early, essentially. Like we would have had to wait 3 to 4 months in James Fox documentary to get any of this. And we probably would have got a very like PG version of this, you know?
Right. Right.
So I don't know. Like I feel like Twitter, like that's the shift that I'm talking about of us being able to directly interact with people in our government that are coming out and being like, you guys need this information. Like this is what you need to look up.
Yeah, that's cool. I never thought of it like that.
It's a weird situation now seeing, okay, so Doty is one thing, but Eric Davis is somebody that I've always looked at as having like credibility. So it was interesting to see a statement from him against Jason, but then Jason fire back. Like it's like this weird jockeying for position going on. This like,
well, it could be that somebody's not in the know and they're, you know, because I'm sure that typically when things like this happen, everybody in the know, in the background is in the know. They know this is coming forward or whatever. So maybe somebody wasn't in the know and they're like, this isn't legitimate, you know, and then they're like,
no, you're right. Like what Astral said earlier, the compartmentalization, like that could be why this is happening. Like it could literally just be that simple. Like these people didn't know each other. And it's like, oh, well, I know this whistleblower, but I don't know this one. And Jason even went as far as saying, like, he didn't know all the other whistleblowers. Like, I'm pretty sure he said that. So,
yeah,
no one should be jumping to conclusions right now. I've seen a lot of comments on my posts from a couple different people saying, Jason, he is so full of crap. This is over. Stop wasting your time. I can't sit here and say that I've come to that conclusion yet. Yes, like there are some red flags. The 20 and back thing, I don't count as a red flag because that I feel like was a miscommunication and a misunderstanding. The UAP task force thing is a red flag to me. I want to know where the confusion was from him in saying that he was a part of the task force and then saying, oh, wait, no, I was on the forum. That's my one red flag where I want to have him on the show and get clarification from him on that. But other than that, I don't have much else to work with. I don't. I really don't.
Yeah.
What's a guy to do?
I hope you get him on your show because I do truly feel,
so.
I truly feel you would treat him so fairly. And I know that there are a lot of podcasts that he could go on that would not treat him fairly.
No, I want to give him. I want to give him room to speak. Point. We're willing to have anybody on the show as long as they come on and act like an adult and be respectful. You know, Mick West, anybody. It doesn't matter. We would be.
And he mentioned a lot of the reason I feel like, and I just felt it, that like he doesn't want to be that guy to like go on these podcasts and to like talk for hours about his stuff and to like for people to like basically pimp him out, you know, like I felt like a part of that, it was like he was being like, you know, here's my story, like, you know, like he feels like I don't know, like a New York guy who's just like, yo, here's my story, take it or leave it. I'm not gonna be like doing all this stuff. Like
Eric Mitchell's
you know,
like that too.
You know, but it's kind of like, Eric, you know, right? Like maybe people like a lot of people throw out the grift stuff, but maybe he's not somebody who wants the limelight, who like wants to be on documentaries. He just wants to get the information out.
Yeah.
That's why I want him on the show. I want to give him a platform to be able to clarify the red flags, and then, you know, further, if he's telling the truth, have an opportunity in front of an audience of people that are really smart and respectful. Our audience is absolutely amazing each week. Have him further solidify his statements, right? Like, I would never want anybody to feel like they were being pimped out, or, you know what I mean? Like, it's not to get views. I mean, hell, we've had Avi Loeb on the show, for Christ's sake. You know what I mean? Like, we're not about that. We don't want, you know what I mean? We're not using people for views. We're bringing people in because we want to talk to them. We have a conversation. You know what I mean? So if he never comes on, God, I got to be honest. I respect the hell out of that. If that's his take and he doesn't want to go about it that way, more power to him. Honestly, I just hope we get a chance to speak to each other at least. You know, again, sometime in the future. But I wonder until we have more information, we nobody can you know, jump to conclusions properly yet. They can't. I just don't think that's possible at the moment.
I wonder if there's any element of wanting to come out publicly for fear of yourself. It's a form of protection because he's not the first person.
That's what happened with Grush. Look, if we really look at Grush, and I was at Roswell, the Roswell conference when Bryce Zabel was talking about this, where basically Grush was scheduled to come out on News Nation, but like Grush was feeling very like antsy about it, and they did a pre-interview where Ross Coulthart and them went to Bryce Zabel's house and had his son record this record this interview. They haven't released it yet, but it was still like that feeling of like, damn, I got to get my stuff out, like you know, like something could happen. And so like imagine being like, I gotta wait 3 months, like I gotta just sit here while I'm listening to Spaces and being like, this guy's bullshit. Like he, you know, like he, of course you would want to jump up and defend your name.
Defend your name, and who knows if there's other people in the background that are trying to prevent him from coming forward, you know. And so there might be a feeling of like, I need the world to know publicly what I've experienced. That way, if anything happens to me, the world knows. I mean, I think there's something to that. Like, these whistleblowers have a legitimate fear.
I would be afraid.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%, 100%.
Now, honestly, though,
I am so sorry, guys. I have to run. You guys keep going as long as you want. I have to go put my kids to bed. So it was so
admirable and respected.
This was so much fun. I just, Astral and Tom, I respect you both so much. I love what you're doing in the community. I love your balanced perspectives, and I feel so honored to know you guys. Oh my goodness!
I told you it's on my desk. She sent me this And I consider it my
know.
first piece of quote unquote fan mail, but this this right here means so much to me. You have no idea.
Oh my
It's
gosh.
literally front and center on my desk every day.
That's
I'm gonna
like
cry.
a
Well,
prized
I've been
possession of
following
mine.
you for so long, and I love your work, and I love what you're doing,
you
and
so
I love how
much.
you both are just so positive, and you
Yes.
bring just not only intelligence but heart to the community. So this was amazing. Let's do it again
very sweet.
sometime. And
Absolutely.
you guys have a great rest of your night.
Good night.
You too. Take care. Much love. Much love.
Well, guys, I think I can wrap as well because I have dogs to deal with. I was over here telling her about her kids, but I've got to deal with my dogs. So.
That's fair.
This has been a fantastic update for people who may not have experienced the last like 3 days in the UFO community, right? Like there's been a lot that happened, even with Chris Mellon's text with Kirkpatrick of like sharing of these you know, yeah.
I've seen him, and I haven't looked closely to see what he was doing. See, I'm just so busy sometimes with my school right now that I just skim. So this has been a great update. I appreciate it so much.
Definitely. It's hard to stay in the loop sometimes.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. It's like sometimes it's like hit and miss, right? It's hot when it's hot, and then when it's not,
I wouldn't have seen what was going on in that space if it weren't for Astral.
Yeah,
like, I was planning on coming upstairs and like chilling, like because I got
we need
sometimes.
So we need like a notification, Elon, if you're listening. We need like a real notification system
Red
that's
alert.
like, yo, get off your ass and get on this space right now.
Like, you know, when they send you the presidential alerts to your phone, they should have like, if you're a Twitter premium user, they should like let you turn that on so that it literally jacks your phone volume up to max. It's like, I would use it. I would use it for this. Definitely. Thank you so much.
I really appreciate you guys coming on.
And I just want to invite you guys too on our show.
Oh, we love you.
Oh, that
Astral's been on a bunch of times. Obviously, Astral always knows he's always welcome on our show anytime he asks. But you two, please, at some point, we would love to have you on.
Yeah, we'd love to join you anytime. We want to support the community and support everybody out here who's doing the work. And
we've had some good women on our show too, and that's another thing. We've had Fringe, we have Paige. We want to have more ladies front and center.
Bring us on. We're here to represent.
There are so many great women in our community that I feel like for whatever dumb reason they don't get the appreciation that they deserve. You being one of them, Ariel's another. You two are out here kicking so much ass, and we love the hell out of you.
Thank you so much. Oh, thank you. We appreciate that. Hey, we love you guys. We're here. We're on the same team, and we're doing the same work. So let's just make it happen.
Definitely.
All right. Good night, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Bye.
See ya.